Dead Island, the action horror game about four douchebags consuming as many energy drinks as they possibly can in order to fight off zombies that are never shown to actually eat anybody. Hey guys, David here. Wow, I just can't seem to stop talking about zombies. I love them so much. So here I am to bring you guys a new review about something else zombie related, and this time it is none other than Dead Island. Now I did manage to nab the Game of the Year edition, so as always I'm going to go ahead and talk about the bonus content at the end of the review, but first let's go ahead and talk about the core game, which is about four protagonists that have to get off an island after it has been infested by a zombie outbreak. Now what Deep Silver and Techland decided to do with this game is to mix genres, just like Gearbox did with Borderlands. And this time they took action horror and mixed it in with RPG. And I gotta be honest, the RPG elements in this game are very well made. They're very fun and they're very addictive because I'm a sucker for RPG games. So when it came to the upgrade system and being able to level up your character, spend all the skill points that you gain every time you level up on different types of skills in your upgrade tree, and be able to gather as many items and weapons as you possibly can, and then use those weapons through a crafting system in order to create even bigger and better and much more effective weapons. I'm a sucker. I'm like a junkie to that kind of stuff because this game has an awful lot of that in a surprising amount. To be honest, I didn't think that the RPG elements in this game were going to be as deep as they were, because I found myself strategically spending all of my skill points on different skills for my character, trying to create the character that I wanted to take through this island, killing off zombies and just being the most badass character that I could be. And one of the surprising aspects of the game is the fact that besides the story missions, you can also do side quests throughout the island that mostly help you build XP so that you can level up your character and make them stronger. And these side missions made this game lengthier than I thought it would be. I was expecting this game to be around maybe 10, 12 hours, but the story missions combined with all of the side quests that I was able to do, and I'll get to that in a second, it amounted to a lengthy 30, maybe 40, sometimes maybe even 50-hour game, giving you an awful lot to do in this game. However, that leads me to what, in my opinion, is probably one of the biggest complaints of the game, and that is the side quests themselves. Now, they are fun to do, and like I said, some of them hit somewhat of an emotional tone, and some of them are just there to help you gain XP. But the biggest problem would have to be that if you want to do these side missions, do them before the end of the game. I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say that there's a particular point in the game where the game asks you to go do whatever you need to do before you proceed. Before you proceed, do as many of these side quests as you possibly can if you want to do them, because once you beat the game, the only way to replay these side quests is to replay the story. Now, the only saving grace is that when you beat the game, you could replay the story with the character that you built by the end of the game, meaning they're still going to have the same level, they're still going to have the same skills, the same inventory, everything. And that's awesome. And the game also allows you to pick certain chapters that you want to revisit. You don't have to start from the very beginning. You can start off from chapter 5 or chapter 7, chapter 12, whatever. The problem, however, is that you still need to go through the narrative of the story in order to interact with the people that gave you those side missions before. Which means that you still have to play through the story all over again. I don't want that. With a game like this, you have to be given the option to revisit the island on your own time in order to complete those side quests. Even if it doesn't connect with how the game ends, it still needs to give you that option. Or, at the very least, go back to like the very, right before the last mission of the game and let you redo that. Like, don't save afterwards, save right before that last mission. Very similar to, I can't remember what game it was, but there's several games that allow you to do whatever you want before that very, very last mission, but instead this game saves right after you beat it, so you're kind of forced to have to start from the beginning, and I really hate that. So essentially, the game didn't have that much replay value because I felt unmotivated because I had just beaten the game. I don't want to replay the story again. The only replay value that I can kind of see myself going back to the game anytime soon would be some of the collectibles. Throughout the island, you can gather tape recordings, journals, and they're nifty to collect. Now, the game lets you play as 4 different characters, and each one of them has different skills and abilities. Like, for example, one is more efficient in blunt objects, whereas the other is more efficient in firearms, which was the one that I went with because I prefer to use guns over anything else, especially from large range, because that's how I like to keep myself from zombies as far away as possible, so I prefer that character. Here's where the next big problem with the game is. If you're building some sort of property surrounding the apocalypse, especially zombies, the thing that you kind of need to make this story as emotionally involved as you can possibly get it to be would be to make your characters somewhat likable. Because I was not exaggerating at the beginning of this review when I said that these 4 characters are douchebags. Either douchebags or stereotypes, or a combination of both. Because you got a white pro athlete douchebag, a black male rapper. Oh, look at that, he's a rapper. And you got a stereotypical Asian woman who wants to honor her father and, you know, oh god. And then you got the 4th character that I went with, which was, I think her name was Perna, and she's an African American female that is that tough as nails, you know, female protagonist that, like I said, we've seen in not only movies but also video games before. The only saving grace with her character is that when you highlight a particular character, when you're choosing them, a little bio pops up, and that bio kind of gives you some background as to what their character is all about. And out of the 4, her was the most easy to connect with, because she had that thing about not liking people that get away with things just because they're rich, which is easy to relate to anybody. It's easy to connect with someone like that. So I went with her, and besides, she was the character that had that proficiency in firearms, so I went with her. Too bad none of these bios have anything to do with it, because they don't even develop as characters. They're just characters. They're just there throughout the entirety of the story. The most likable character is this girl named Jin, who is a mechanic's daughter, and even she's kind of naive in certain points in the game where you're just like, why are you doing that? Don't do that. The writing of the characters also reflects the writing of the story, which is kind of non-existent for the first half of the game. I mean, the game introduces zombies, and then for the first half it's just you going from person to person, getting instructions on what to do next to get you from point A to point B to get off the island. It isn't until the halfway mark, 50%, when the game remembers, oh yeah, we kind of have to at least somewhat explain where these zombies came from. And I appreciate their efforts to introduce a new element that I've never seen before when it comes to a zombie outbreak origin. But even then, by that, I mean by the halfway point of a game, it's kind of too little too late. And funny enough, the quality of the story can kind of be a metaphor for the quality of the presentation of this game. Almost everything is split 50-50. I'm not even kidding. Now, the island is actually quite sizable, especially for this kind of game. Much like how I was expecting the story to be kind of short, around 10-12 hours. The island is actually pretty large. I was expecting it to be a lot smaller than it actually was, but man, there was actually an awful lot of areas that I haven't even explored yet. But in terms of how the island looks, most of the outdoor environments actually look pretty good. There was actually a moment in the game where your character says, wow, that's actually pretty beautiful, especially when they were going down the hill, and you capture the sight of the entire beach, and I was like, wow, this actually looks good. It looks pretty good. Not next gen or anywhere close to that, but you know, I genuinely liked looking at the view. But then you would enter buildings, and almost every indoor environment looked like something that could be created on 3ds Max. 3ds Max is a computer animating software for you kids. Same thing could be said for the character models. Some of them looked decent, others looked like a melted candle with dead eyes, and they weren't even the zombies. Same thing goes for the voice work. Every now and then there was actually a performance that actually kind of hit me emotionally, especially one that got embedded into my brain. And it's early in the game when you're still at the hotel and you're walking about and you find this guy in the middle of a pool that's kind of somewhat filled with blood, and he's over the body of what I'm assuming was his father, and he's just wailing, just like, oh my god, why did I do this? And he's talking about how he had to kill his girlfriend and his brother and his mother and his father, I can't remember, but I thought that his performance, and he's just an extra, was really good. But then you got others where, I'm not even kidding, there's a cop later on in the game that I passed by and he says, "It's like I'm in a nightmare and I just can't wait to wake up." And he literally says it with that delivery. I'm like, oh my god. And guess what? The same thing could be said about the zombies. Some of them looked kind of eerie, but then there's others that were kind of annoying, especially when the game realizes that you can actually pass by these zombies without having to fight them as long as you reach that particular checkpoint to trigger a cutscene. It's like the game realizes like, oh, you've been passing all my zombies? Okay, I'm gonna throw you all these runners and just kick the living crap out of you. Which brings me to something that I'm in the middle of, and that is the design for the zombies. Like I said, some of them actually looked pretty good, but then others were kind of cookie cutter. Like when it comes to video games, we're seeing the same kind of zombie in almost all of these games. You got the basic zombie that's just shambling, heading towards you, and they kind of pick up the pace as they get closer. And then you got the runners that are obviously fast as lightning. I don't know why, especially when they're not necessarily that athletic. And then you got the fat ones, which, you guessed it, are going to spit acid at you. So games these days, especially zombie games, are starting to follow the same kind of template when it comes to the design for these zombies. You hardly see any of this in TV shows like The Walking Dead or movies, but games, because they have to throw a challenge at you and a different variation of enemy because you're actually playing the game, they kind of start to follow the same kind of design that I'm hoping they start to steer away and start to introduce something new. But most of them are decent, and I cannot get over how awesome it is to kill some of these zombies. The gore effects and the blood is just so satisfying. I'm giving you a suggestion right here. If you play this game, never let go of a machete. When you take a machete and you aim it a certain way to where you can slash off their head and they just go, it's just so satisfying. This game is filled with several moments like that, and if you equip the right weapons, you're gonna have an awful lot of fun with it. Which brings me to the gameplay. Well, it's an action horror game, and it's a first-person game, so it's from the first-person perspective, but you get to use an awful lot of different weapons, from actual guns and machine guns, different kind of guns, to melee weapons such as a mace or a machete or a bat. And what I like about the gameplay is that it actually got kind of difficult. It didn't get too simple. It had certain mechanics that made you think and strategize how you're going to be able to use these weapons, because after a while they're going to start to give out and they're going to break and they're not going to be effective whatsoever. So you have to find new weapons, and then like I said, you can use the crafting system to create much more effective weapons. And then you got this stamina bar, so that it's not just like, oh, you can easily just run. No, you're eventually going to run out of stamina, so you have to think about where you need to go, especially when you're running away from runners. So that the game made me think in that sense? Actually, it did. It made me think of where I can use my bullets and where I can use my melee weapons. Now, it's not as involved in that sense like The Last of Us, where it's like limited ammo and limited weapons. No, you're going to find an awful lot of paddles and bats, and you're rarely going to run out of ammo. I did run out of ammo, but it didn't happen as frequently as it does in The Last of Us, and it didn't trigger a sense of horror when you ran out of bullets, because like I said, if you can run to that checkpoint to trigger that cutscene, you're good to go. Now, earlier I mentioned playing with a friend online. This game is actually kind of refreshing when it comes to online multiplayer, because the entire game is a multiplayer game. It doesn't have a separate multiplayer component. The entire single player can actually be played with friends as long as you switch it from single player to online. The entire island could be used as some form of lobby for other friends to jump in, as long as you're signed into the network, whether it be the Xbox Live or the PlayStation Network. People could just jump in and help you out during tough situations when you need to get out of a horde of zombies. Now, this is where I get kind of nitpicky, because of this integrated system in which people can just respawn whenever they die, because of the fact that the whole place could be used as a lobby for players to enter through online connectivity. When I die and come back, the zombies that you killed stay dead, and the zombies that you inflicted damage upon have that damage. They have like half of a health bar left, and you just need to finish them. And during most moments of the game, especially when it got incredibly difficult, I accepted this. I was completely welcome to this, because I'm like, yes, I cannot kill the same zombies over and over. But then there were other moments where I was genuinely confident that I was able to kill all of these zombies, but then through a minor fluke, I died. And so coming back and seeing that most of the zombies are already gone, and not feeling that satisfaction of killing off all of these zombies without dying is kind of taken away from me, and I'm like, oh. So because the entire game could be played as co-op, there's no competitive, and I do wish that they could have experimented and brought some form of competitive multiplayer to this game, in which you have to defeat a certain amount of zombies and beat your opponents in terms of how many zombies you killed, or you have to kill each other before the zombies get you. There's different ways that they could have experimented with that, but I'm still intrigued by how fresh it felt to have other people jump in to help you out during the single player. So overall, I thought Dead Island was a well-made game, and it had several surprising aspects, such as the length of the game and all the addictive RPG elements and some of the things in the action horror department that I actually did like, but several of its missteps, such as unlikable characters and the weak story and some of the flubs in the technical aspects of the game, such as how these characters look and the indoor environments, they just feel like wasted opportunities that I feel like if they have just spent a little more time polishing some of these things, as well as experimenting with the multiplayer, this could have been probably one of the best zombie games to date. But still, it's a decent game, and I wouldn't mind revisiting it, but it's probably going to be a while before I do so. And for that, I give Dead Island a 7 out of 10. Now real quick, let me talk about the bonus DLC that came with the Game of the Year edition. It's not a whole lot. It just came with a few modifications to be able to craft certain weapons, such as the Ripper mod. Haven't done it because I didn't manage to gather all the essential materials by the end of the game, but from the look of it, it looks pretty badass. And then you got the Bloodbath Arena, which is like a challenge map, so to speak, where you have to defeat waves of zombies. And then you got the most important piece of DLC, which is the Ryder White campaign. Now, I cannot talk about this campaign without getting into some minor spoilers, so you've been warned, spoiler warning for the core Dead Island game. The Ryder White campaign is basically a 2-hour piece of DLC that explains some of the background behind Ryder White, which is one of the essential characters of the original game that gets revealed to be a bit of a douchebag by the end of Dead Island. However, this bonus piece of DLC introduces a twist that I actually really liked. I was like, wow, this is pretty clever. It's like something out of the Saw movies back when they were good, like the first Saw movies. That it's a twist that I really respected. The problem with that twist, however, would be that because it's in a piece of DLC, I don't know how well they would treat that twist in the introduction of Dead Island Riptide. I have not played Riptide, so I don't know if they handled it very well in that game, but I feel that it's a twist that's going to go over people's head if they have not played the Ryder White DLC. And I think they did a really good job having Ryder White feel like a different character than the other 4 playable characters in the original game, because he really did feel like a soldier. You know, he had stronger stamina. Granted, he couldn't do certain things that the other characters would do because of the situations that they were put in, but he just felt like a different character, and that's cool. He didn't feel like the same wireframe as the other characters, like copy and paste with a different skin. He actually felt like a different character. Too bad this character is, guess what? A douchebag. Even before the outbreak, he's willing to kill his wife to not compromise a mission. I'm like, even if he hesitated, I'm like, And like I mentioned, this campaign is pretty short. As opposed to the 40-hour original game, this is only like 2 hours. I was like, wow, now what I do? Still, it's a neat little bonus that introduces a nice little twist that will make you look back at the original game and be like, huh, that's very interesting. I really like that. At least I did. So thank you guys for watching. Please let me know what you guys thought of Dead Island if you played it. And if you guys liked my review and would like to purchase the game, be sure to use the link in the description. It would really help me out. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.